In this video, we're going to talk about how to solve a word problem by algebra. So first, let's look at an example. If a number is decreased by 10, the result is 15. Find the number. So here we're not going to try to figure out if we should do subtraction or addition, and what we're going to do is we want to set up an equation with the letter unknown of x or whatever letter you want to use, and then we solve the equation to find the unknown. So step 1, we translate words to mathematical symbols. A number, it's unknown, so I'm going to pick a letter for it. So I'm going to choose N. Is decreased by, we know it's decreased by from previous section, we know that it's subtraction. It's decreased by 10, so subtract 10 from N. The result means after the subtraction is 15. So the result is 15 means N minus 10, the result of N minus 10 is equal to 15. So is here corresponds to the equal sign. So this is the equation we set up. So for the problems in this section, we want you to set up equation and solve. And so first of all, you have to give me an equation and then solve the equation. So how do we solve it? This is what we learned in chapter 9. So we try to get N by itself, and in order to get rid of minus 10, we do opposite operation. So we add 10 both sides. So we get N equals 25. So that's the number we're looking for. So this problem, even if you don't use algebra, don't set up equation, you can still probably figure out what the answer is. It's 15 plus 10, that's 25. But we want you to set up equation and solve it, because the complicated problems will not be too easy to figure out the answer, and you would get confused if we need to use addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. So we can look at another example here. So we want you to practice using equation to solve problems. So example 2, 6 less than twice a number is 20. Find the number. And in this case, it's going to take a little bit of time to try to figure out what we should do with the numbers 20, twice, and 6. Should we divide 20 by 2, or add 20 by 2, or add 6, or subtract 6? And that's a little confusing for most of students. So what we're going to do is we're going to translate words to symbols. And so you don't have to worry about if you need to think backwards or something else. So whatever they say, we use what we learned before to translate to mathematical symbols. So 6 less than, we know it's minus 6 from previous section. Twice a number. A number is unknown, so we're going to pick a letter for that. So letter N. Twice means 2, so it's going to be 2 times N right here. And so 6 less than 2N, that means we take 6 away from 2N. So we subtract 6 from 2N. Is equal sign, and 20 is 20. So what we doing here is we just do translation. And after translation, we should always get an equation, and we solve the equation. So here we add 6, try to get 2n by itself, and then we try to get an n by itself by the opposite operation, because the operation between 2 and n is multiplication, so we do the opposite operation, that's division. So divide both sides by 2, so n equals 13. Okay. So this is how we use equation to solve the problem. And the second step, so always set up equation and then solve. That's example 2. Some of the problems may have more than one unknown. So right here we just have one number that's unknown. What if we have 2 unknowns? So if we look at example 3, say one number is 6 more than another number. The sum of the larger and twice the smaller number is 27. What are the numbers? So here, first thing, translate words to symbols. But instead of having just one sentence, we have 2 sentences here. And also we notice that there are 2 numbers unknown, one number and another number. So apparently one of them is a larger number, the other is the smaller. So right now, we're just going to use the English words, larger and smaller. And then later, we will try to figure out which one we will use the letter unknown for it. So from first sentence, one number is 6 more than another. Apparently, one number is the larger number because it's bigger, and another number is the smaller number. So first sentence can be translated into mathematical symbols. The larger number, I'm just going to write down larger, is, I'm going to use the equal sign, is. 6 more than, we know 6 more than is plus 6. Another number is the smaller number. So how do we obtain the larger number from the smaller? If we add 6 to the smaller, we get the larger number. So that's why we have, this is the equation we get from the first sentence. But this is different from example 1 and 2 because in this case right here, we have larger and smaller, both unknown in the equation. And we cannot solve it if there are 2 unknowns, but only one equation. So you can look at example 1 and 2. In each equation, we get there's only one unknown, the letter N. But over here, we have larger and smaller. They're both unknown. So we won't be able to solve it yet. Let's look at next sentence. The sum means addition of the larger number. So I'm going to write down the second equation, the larger number, the sum of the larger, and twice the smaller. So twice means 2 times smaller. So twice the smaller. Okay, so the sum means addition. I'm going to write down addition here. Start from the beginning again. The sum, addition, write down addition. The larger right here. And what? And not the smaller, it's twice the smaller. So instead of adding larger and smaller, we're actually adding larger and twice the smaller. So this means twice the smaller. So this is exactly the first part of the sentence. The sum, this means the sum of the larger and twice the smaller. Is means equal sign 27. So now each sentence is translated into a mathematical equation here. But we cannot solve either of them because there are always 2 unknowns, larger and smaller. So the next goal is to combine them into one equation. So how do we combine? Actually, what we're going to do is what we do substitution. We plug in. How do we plug in? Which one plugs into which one? And from the first one, we can see it tells us clearly the larger one can be written as the smaller plus 6. In other words, we can get the larger one by adding 6 to the smaller. So the larger one in the second equation, translated from the first sentence, the second sentence, the larger right here, the one circled right here, I'm going to get rid of it. And I'm going to replace it with smaller plus 6. So this whole thing right here in the box, I use this to replace larger. Why? Because from first sentence, we get this equation which tells us, right here, tells us the larger here is can be obtained by adding 6 to smaller. So the larger is exactly smaller plus 6. So I'm going to take larger away. Take it away. I put smaller plus 6 here in that place to replace it. And I copy everything else. So plus 2 smaller, I still have 2 times smaller, equals 27. So the only thing I did is in our second equation, so this is translated from the first sentence, this is translated from the second sentence. In the second equation, I copy everything else, plus 2 smaller equals 27, I copy them. I only replace larger with smaller plus 6. Because they're the same thing. Larger is smaller plus 6. Smaller plus 6 is larger. So, or you can say the larger can be obtained by smaller plus 6. So we get a new equation here. And in this new equation, we can call it equation 3. In this equation, we don't have larger anymore. We just have smaller and smaller. And instead of copying words, English words, we're going to use a single letter to represent it, to save the writing. So smaller, I'm just going to use the letter S to represent smaller, and a copy plus 6 plus 2, and a smaller, I'm going to use the English word letter S to represent it. So I get a new equation, S plus 6 plus 2S equals 27. And this is the equation we want. So you can see example 3 takes more time to get the equation because it has 2 unknowns and 2 sentences. Each sentence is translated to a mathematical equation, and then we got to plug one of them into the other to get a third equation with only 1 unknown. And in this case, we can solve combine like terms. So 1s plus 2s, we get 3s like before. That's the problem we learned in chapter 9. And I get s by itself, so I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides. So we get 3s equals 21 and divide 3 both sides. So we get s equals 7. And we know s here represents the smaller. And we still have to find the bigger, the larger. How do we find the larger? Then we go back to our equation 1, the first equation. It says clearly, or the first sentence, the larger one can be obtained by adding 6 to the smaller. So 6, what's 6? 6 is 7. So we add 6 to the smaller, 7, we get 13, which is our larger. So we have the answers for both numbers. The smaller is 7, the larger is 13. And what we did was, after we find the smaller, we plug in the 7 for smaller. And we get 7 plus 6, so we can get 13 for the larger. So example 3 is more difficult than example 1 and example 2. And a lot of times we have examples like this, but maybe written differently. So we're going to look at one more example. Example 4. Suppose Marina is 3 times as old as her son Jason. The sum of their ages is 48 years. How old is each? Here we can see we still have 2 unknowns. One is Marina's age, the other is Jason's age. So like the previous example, we have 2 unknowns. One is larger, the other is smaller. And so they look different. The problem looks different, but it's still the same type of question. We have 2 unknowns. We have 2 sentences. The first sentence right here,